We are delighted to have with us our keynote speaker for the evening, Mr. Sandeep Dhar. Sandeep is the Chief Delivery Officer at Apexon and has 30 plus years of experience in IT services, consulting, retail banking, and retail. He specializes in design thinking, innovation, and building digital products. With a diverse industry background, working for organizations like Goldman Sachs, Citibank, Tesco, Capgemini, and Sapient, Sandeep brings global perspective and a wealth of experience to leadership roles. His expertise in product management, design thinking, and innovation has been honed through his tenure in these esteemed companies. Sandeep excels in dynamic environments, driving success and innovation across industry. He values continuous learning and growth, embracing humility and open mindset. Sandeep holds an MBA from IMT Ghaziabad, degree in physics from University of Delhi, and is a graduate of Wharton Business School's Advanced Management Program. Over to you, Mr. Sandeep. Also, students, we have a Q&A post Mr. Sandeep's address. So please put your questions in the Q&A box and we'll answer them soon after his address. Thank you. Over to you, Mr. Sandeep.
Hey, thank you very much for that introduction, and a big thank you to the FFE team for having me here. I was hugely inspired listening to the story about FFE that you told us, and I'm very I wasn't aware of many of those details, so I'm glad that I got a peek into what all has happened in the past and the extent of work which FFE is doing. So Sudha, Ram, Taruna, Tanvi, a huge thank you and congratulations to you for what you have achieved. Also very inspiring to see that you are committing your time and energy to things which don't necessarily have a huge commercial impact. So having an impact on the lives of so many people, I think is so much more inspiring than chasing purely commercial interests. So thank you very much for everything that you do. To all the people who have taken time to join in today to listen to me, thank you to all of you as well. I hope I'm able to make this session relevant for all of you. Yes, I have many years, over 3 decades of work experience, but I also believe that sometimes it's the last 5 years that are most relevant, because the world has changed so fast that what you learned or did 30 years back may not necessarily be relevant today. But anyway, I don't want to be preaching anything today. I think all of you have a good head on your shoulders. You will choose whatever path makes sense for all of you. And what I'll do today is I'll kind of share some snippets from my career and my life. And some of it may be relevant, in which case you are free to adopt it. And if it doesn't make sense, then there is no right or wrong in this world. All of you can follow your heart and do what makes sense for you. So I'll start from the time when I just graduated with a degree in physics, and I studied in Delhi University, and I went to a fairly notorious and rough college. And there's a lot of importance from a peer pressure perspective on a macho appearance. And the result was that I had long hair, a nice bushy beard, anything that I could do to appear stronger and more impactful than some of the other tough students who were floating around. And I continued like that, and one fine day I completed my graduation, and I started applying for it was quite popular those days to apply for management trainee positions in some big public sector organizations and some big private sector organizations as well. And I kept applying, and I wouldn't get a response from anyone. And I was one day sharing my frustration with my father and saying that, hey, I seem to be applying to so many places. I have a degree in physics. I have good marks, good percentages. I'm a rank holder, but for some reason, no one is responding to my applications. And my father said, okay, next time you are applying, just show me the application. Let me have a look at what you are writing and in that application. So I did that. So the next application which came, which I filled in before sending it off, I showed it to my dad. And what he noticed was that, at the top of the application, you were supposed to put up your photograph. And my photograph depicted someone, with a very rough appearance. And the first thing that my father commented was that looking at this photograph, people will only be scared. You'll be the last person they'll call for an interview. Okay. And that, really was an important learning for me, and something which got reinforced during my career, that appearances do matter. Okay. Sometimes we have this idealistic belief that people should, give us an opportunity or give us a job or invest in us, for what we know and what we can do rather than for how we look. But the fact is that first impressions matter. And the best way to make a good first impression is by making sure that we are well groomed, well dressed, and well turned out. And after that, all subsequent applications I filled in, I put in a better looking photograph of myself, and miraculously I started being called for more and more interviews. Right. So that was, one of my first learnings growing up. I, later went on to do an MBA and, entered the workforce. And as I started working, one of my first jobs was in a company called NIIT, and they were looking for people to sell software. And, this was 1988. Not too many people were familiar with software. It's very different today. Regardless of what field of study you do, you are literate with computers. But at that time, I had been a student of physics and then management, and I had had no exposure to computers. And, I was told that, so in the interview, I told NIIT that, hey, I know nothing about computers and software. Do you really think I'll be able to do a good job selling it? And they said, yeah, it's not difficult. You communicate well. And our model is that as a salesperson, we'll equip you with just a little bit of, initial knowledge, which will allow you to have a first level discussion with a customer. And once a customer is interested in the product, that's when you will fix up a separate meeting, and you will take a software expert with you for further discussion. So I said, fine, if you think that's a workable model, I'm happy to try it out. So I started working and went out in the field, met lots of customers, and I would make the pitch based upon the initial knowledge that I had. And then whenever a more complex discussion had to take place, I would try and fix up a separate meeting. Now, the problem with this model was that once I started talking about the product in the initial conversation with the customer, it was very difficult for me to end the conversation halfway saying that, oh, I only know this much. And now for, and really admit my inadequacy. It was very difficult to bring that meeting to a sudden end and to say that now I would need to bring in someone else for further discussion. Okay. So there were frequent incidents where this model was becoming a bit of a handicap. And then the big wake-up moment was when I went to this research institute to pitch the software that I was selling. And this was a government-funded research facility, and there were two individuals working over there, two scientists, who clearly didn't have much work to do, and their only favorite pastime was to agree to meet two salespeople like myself, and then engage in a intellectual, knowledge-based argument with this person, and eventually show this person, how much more they know than the person. Okay. So with my limited knowledge, I went to meet them, and they started asking me questions. And with each answer that I gave, the questioning got deeper. Okay. And at that stage, I didn't have the humility to admit that, hey, I don't know more than this. I now need to go and get someone else for further discussion. I kept answering their questions, and I kept making up answers. Okay. And the more I made up answers, the deeper was the hole that I dug for myself. And, it started becoming more and more apparent that, I didn't know much. And they completely exposed my lack of knowledge. And it was a very humiliating experience. And I left that place almost in tears because of how, how in a very stark manner, these two individuals showed me that how little I knew. And I was quite down and out that day. But the next day I decided that I will never, ever let anyone do this to me. And I realized that there is no substitute to, gaining knowledge. And in fact, I was recently watching this old film, one of the older Karate Kid movies. And there was this dialogue in that which caught my attention, which said that ambition without knowledge is like a boat on dry land. Okay, so it won't go anywhere. Just having a boat is not enough. You need the water on which that boat will float, and that knowledge is, that water comes in the form of knowledge. And, I went back from the next day onwards. I made sure that I dedicated, enough time every day in the evening to learning all that I could about computers and software. And I was very happy. 9 months later, I went and visited these two individuals again and got into a, nice intellectual debate with them. And this time I was able to hold my own. Okay. So I was definitely not able to sell anything to them. But, that day was a, day of redemption for me because I was able to prove to them that, someone else can also know as much as those two scientists did, right? So knowledge comes from hard work. It comes from making it a priority. During my student days, I used to be a voracious reader of fiction. And after this incident, the next 10 years, I did not read a single book on fiction because all my time, energy went into learning as much as I could about information technology, about software, about computers, because that was the field that I was in. So, so this was, a defining moment for me. I continued working, switched careers, moved to banking, and I started working in Citibank. And that was the time when call centers were extremely new. Okay, so today it is ubiquitous, whether you want to talk to a bank, whether you want to talk to your telecom provider, whether you want to talk to a restaurant, it is very common for us to call up a number, be greeted by an automated voice, you go into a queue, and then there is a team of individual referred to as contact center agents who service these calls which come in. So in my initial days in Citibank, I was asked to work on this project, which required us to build the first contact center in the banking industry in India. In fact, it was one of the first contact centers across industries in India. So as I was working on the project, one of the things that I had to work on was a capacity planning model. A capacity plan, as many of you would know, is determining that if we are going to get X number of calls in an hour, then how many people do we need to service those calls? Okay. I know that in the audience, we have a good mix of engineers and people from other streams as well. So I'll try and keep it non-technical for the ease of comprehension of all the participants. So this capacity planning model, I took a fairly simplistic approach to how to do this. And the approach that I took was to say that, hey, if we are going to get 100 calls in an hour, and a single person can handle, let's say, 10 calls in an hour, then that means 100 divided by 10, we need 10 people to manage that call volume. Okay. Now, there was a big defect in this form of capacity planning, because this form of capacity planning works well when you are doing work where no queue formation takes place. So for example, if I'm processing loan applications which have come into a bank, okay, this model works well because, when files are in a queue, they don't complain. But when we talk about a call center, the calls which come in, these are individuals, these are people who are calling. And people can't be kept in a queue infinitely, because if you do that, that's very poor service. And we used to have the standard in Citibank that we should pick up a call within 15 seconds of the customer having come into the call center queue. Okay. Now, what happened is because of this poor or this faulty capacity planning model, we hired less people than what was required for a certain volume. Okay. And all our statistics showed that not more than 20% of the customers were being attended to within 15 seconds of them calling. Okay, so the bosses got very upset and agitated, and they started scolding and piling on to the manager, saying that they are not managing their teams well and their teams are not working hard enough. So a lot of pressure was put onto the managers without really understanding what the root cause of the problem is. So what the managers did is they got together with their teams and they devised this strategy whereby, when a call would come in, they would immediately pick it up and tell the customer, thank you for calling Citibank, and then ask the customer to go on hold. Okay. So what they would do is, in rapid succession, they would pick up all the calls, but they would put all the customers on hold. So as far as the reported metrics, the reported MIS showed, the customers were being picked up within 15 seconds, but they were beating the system by putting them on hold. So the customers were just coming off the automated queue, but then they were going into a new queue. So nothing was improving, but the metrics improved and all the bosses were happy. And they told the manager, see, just because we put pressure on you, you started working hard and started performing better. But the fact was that no one was really performing better. They had figured out a mechanism of beating the system. So this faulty capacity planning model went undetected, and everyone celebrated success of launching these first call centers. And then Citibank wanted to launch a similar call center in Indonesia, and the Indonesian country manager asked our country manager, hey, can you send someone experienced from your team who worked on your project and who could help us launch our call center? So, I was nominated and I was sent to Indonesia to help them implement their call center. And guess what? I introduced the same faulty capacity planning model to the team in Indonesia. And in Indonesia, they had, they had assigned one of their employees who was a fresh graduate from an engineering college in the US who had come back to Indonesia. This was his first job, and he was assigned to help me with this project. So when I was doing this capacity planning model, he tried to show me a different kind of a calculation, which to me sounded very complex at that time. And, I told him, hey, this is too complex, and why are you unnecessarily complicating this? And this person, I still remember his name was Agus. Agus he was a very soft-spoken guy and a very timid guy, and didn't have very good command over the English language. And because he didn't have good command over the English language, he was not able to really explain to me, what he was trying to say. So I ended up bulldozing him. And even when we were making the final presentation to the vice president at that time, he tried to, talk a bit about how he thinks the capacity planning model is not right. But again, with my arrogance and with my superior command over the language, I was able to, bulldoze him into silence. And the vice president also scolded him, saying that, hey, if this thing has worked in India, why are you complicating things? Why don't you just simply learn from what this smart, intelligent gentleman is trying to tell us? So anyway, Citibank Indonesia got launched with the same faulty capacity planning model. I came back to India, and I was once visiting my sister, who used to work in NCERT, the National Council of Education, Research and Training at that time. And I happened to visit her library along with her, coincidentally, because she wanted to return some books. And as I was, waiting for her, I was casually looking at the books in the shelf. And one book title caught my attention, and that talked about capacity planning model in call centers. So there was actually a book on that. And, those were the days when internet was not there. So I did not have the ability to go to Google and learn about call centers. So we used to learn through hit and trial, or if we chanced upon this kind of a book. So I ended up borrowing that book, and that night I went through it, and I realized that, I was using a faulty capacity planning model. And I went and redid the calculations based upon my newfound learning. And when I did that, I realized that we had employed about 100 call center agents in India, and we were short by another 75 people. So that was the extent of shortage of staff that we had because of something which I did not do right. Okay, so numerous learnings from this. One is for managers, that if you just bulldoze people without trying to get to the root cause of an issue, sometimes teams will find a workaround solution which won't really improve anything. It will just beat the system. So it's important to always try and get into the detail of things. The second learning, which is particularly relevant, I believe, for all of us here, is the importance of communication skills. It doesn't matter how knowledgeable you are, unless you have the ability to express yourself and you have the confidence to express yourself. There will always be an arrogant person like Sandeep who will come around and bulldoze you into submission, right? So communication skills are very important. That's the second learning from this story. And the third learning from this story is that many a times we equate capability with a person's communication skills. So while it's important for us to have communication skills, it's also important for us to realize that oftentimes we'll come across people who may not have the greatest communication skills, and we should be patient enough to try and listen to them, try and get them to speak out, because if we don't do that, we will not get to the root cause of things. So that was another incident which I thought I would share with you. The third incident that I'll share with you is, about life not always, being straightforward. Okay, it's not necessary that you will succeed all the time. It's not going to be a straight line. Okay, there will be periods in your life and in your career where you will not do well for reasons beyond your control. And I went through one such period while working for a bank in Singapore. When I joined the bank, they had big plans to launch consumer banking, and that was an area which I specialized in at that time. And within 2 months of launching, that bank got a new CEO, and this new CEO was not fond of consumer banking, and he felt that it was, it wasn't that profitable. And in his new strategy, he deprioritized consumer. So the result was that all the plans, all the investments that had been promised in consumer banking weren't being made. And the size of my job kind of became 1/10 of what I thought it would be. And therefore, I decided that I should, cut my losses and find another job. Now, unfortunately, what happened at that time was there was a economic recession, and it was very hard for me to find another job. And initially, I was quite confident. I thought with all the experience and all the knowledge I have, it should be very easy for me to find a job. But because the economic environment wasn't great, I kept applying, and for one reason or the other, I didn't succeed in finding another job. And the result was, as I kept failing one interview after the other, the frustration levels in me started growing. And I started getting very despondent and very desperate. And one day I remember I was quite agitated and I was quite depressed. And I just left my office and I went for a walk by the riverside. And at one point on that riverside, I saw there was a person sitting. He was a Indian gentleman sitting there. He had a table and a chair. He was sitting under a large umbrella, and he had a signboard saying that he would for $5 tell you your fortune. And such was my state of despondence at that time. I'm not normally a person who believes in fortune telling, but I was in such a low that I thought that, hey, maybe this fortune teller will tell me, for how long, my bad luck and my low is going to last. So I went up to this person and I, asked him to tell me my fortune, to read my hand. And this person, he was an elderly person. He looked at me, and I think he could, with his, many years of experience of life, he could tell looking at me that I was in a depressed state. And credit to the gentleman, he said, hey, this whole fortune telling thing is a fun activity. It's not real. Okay. And I do this, just to, give, have an interesting conversation with people, just give them some, some insights which has no science behind it. And you seem to be in a very bad shape. And I don't want to waste your time and your money by trying to tell you that I can predict your future or I can tell you your fortune. And he told me that, hey, you seem to be going through a low period in your life. Rather than listening to my fortune, just take my advice. And the advice is that, don't lose faith. Keep doing what you're good at, and times will change and times will turn, and you will get back to your, onto a path of success. And that was a very, big lesson for me. I went back with renewed energy and renewed enthusiasm. I'm still grateful to that person for not having cheated me, but for having given me an important life lesson. So that's again a message for all of you. You will go through lows in your life, but have faith in your own abilities, have faith in hard work, and good times do return.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sandeep, for this very, very insightful and motivational session. I'm sure there was a takeaway for each one of us here today.